A small town? A missing girl? A canine who refused to stay quiet when a dog uncovers a chilling secret in an abandoned factory. The search for the truth takes a deadly turn. One man's lie and a desperate cry for help lead to an arrest. But will justice be enough to heal the scars left behind? If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video. It really helps us grow. Also, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's jump into the story. It was one of those quiet mornings in Winsong, Minnesota. Snow fell softly, covering the streets, the trees, and the small abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. The air was crisp, still, and the world seemed frozen in time, as if the snow had a way of freezing everything in place. Officer Mira Thorne stood by her patrol car, the cold wind nipping at her skin, her breath visible in the air. She had just moved to Winsong a few months ago, and so far the small town had been uneventful, at least. That was until today. The radio crackled to life. Cutting through the stillness. Mira, we've got another lead on the missing person. Case Delaney Quinn. She's been gone for 2 weeks now. Local reports said someone heard strange noises near the old factory on the edge of town. We need you to check it out. The captain's voice came through the speaker. Mira's heart skipped a beat. The case had been haunting her, mostly because Delaney was well known in Winsong. She worked at Rosie's Diner, and her sudden disappearance had left the whole town wondering. Some whispered she'd left for a fresh start, others suspected something darker. But no one had the answers. Mira glanced over at her canine partner, Tycho, a Belgian Malinois, who was sitting silently in the back seat of the patrol car. His dark eyes flicked to her, ears perked as if sensing the change in the air. She reached back to unclip his leash. He stood up ready. Come on, boy. Let's see what we've got, she muttered as she grabbed her flashlight and stepped out of the car. The old factory loomed ahead, its broken windows staring blankly at the street. It had been abandoned for years, but still, it felt as if something was alive inside, something the snow didn't touch, the kind of place that didn't want to be disturbed. Tycho led the way, his nose twitching as he moved forward. He had been through countless searches with Mira, trained for everything from missing persons to detecting dangerous substances. But there was something about today that made her uneasy. The dog's behavior was different, more focused than usual, like he knew they were close to something important. They reached the door of the factory, which creaked open with the slightest push. The smell of old wood and rust filled the air, a mix of forgotten memories and lingering shadows. The place had once been alive with the hum of production, but now it felt like the last remnants of something long gone. Tycho, Heel, Myra called softly, but the dog didn't listen. His body was tense, ears locked forward. He was already off, moving quickly into the darkness of the factory. Mira followed him, her steps cautious as she tried to catch up. They passed rows of broken furniture and scattered debris. The silence was thick, broken only by their footsteps and the occasional creak of the building. It was a place that had long since been forgotten by the town, but it was clear Tycho hadn't forgotten it. He was acting strange, his eyes darting back and forth, his nose working overtime. Suddenly, the dog stopped. He was still, his body rigid, staring at an old, sun-faded freezer sitting in the corner of the room. The freezer was out of place, a relic from another time. It was slightly tilted to the side as though it had been moved and then left behind. Tycho growled low, his tail stiffening. Mira's heart skipped a beat. She knew that growl wasn't normal. It was urgent. Easy, boy, she whispered, trying to calm him. She walked slowly toward the freezer, her flashlight beam flickering over the rusted surface. There was no sign of food or anything that could explain why Tycho was so focused on it. It was just an old, unused freezer, but something about it made her uneasy. Why was the dog so fixated? What is it, boy? She asked quietly, crouching next to the freezer. Tycho was already scratching at the door with his paws, his teeth bared, barking in an almost frantic manner. He wasn't giving up. Mira stood up and approached the freezer cautiously. She placed her hand on the handle. It was cold, even though the building had no electricity. The freezer shouldn't have been this cold, not in the middle of the factory. With no power running to it, Tycho kept barking, his body trembling with anticipation. His behavior was becoming more intense by the second. Okay, she muttered, pulling out her multi-tool and slicing through the tape that sealed the freezer shut. The tape was old, yellowed with age. Someone had tried to seal this shut, and the thought sent a shiver down her spine. With a sharp tug, the handle came loose. The door creaked as it opened. A blast of cold air rushed out, making her gasp. The smell was faint, but it wasn't the usual freezer smell. There was something metallic, something ... wrong. She shone the flashlight inside. Wrapped in plastic, barely frozen, was something pale, something that shouldn't have been there. Mira's stomach twisted. Her hands shook as she reached for her radio. "This is Officer Thorne. I need forensics at the factory. We found something." She paused, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not just a missing person anymore. We've got a body." Tycho stood his ground beside her, still watching. The freezer. His eyes unwavering. The town of Winsong would never be the same. The days after the discovery of Delaney, Quinn's remains in the old factory were filled with tension. Winsong had never seen anything like it. The small town was usually calm, with quiet streets and neighbors who knew each other's names. Now everything felt heavy, as though the air itself was holding its breath. Mira Thorne couldn't stop. Thinking about what she had found, the freezer had been the first step, but it was only the beginning. She sat at her desk in the small precinct, staring at the pictures of the crime scene, her mind racing. Delaney's arm had been found frozen in the freezer, and the forensics team had confirmed it was her. The tattoo on her wrist matched. The signs of frostbite told a tragic story of someone who had been hidden away. But Mira's gut told her that the freezer wasn't the end. There was more to the story, or had to be. Taya, her canine partner, had been acting strange too. He hadn't stopped alerting after the freezer. At every turn, he seemed to be pointing toward something else, something buried. His instincts were sharp, and Mira trusted them completely. "You know something, don't you, boy?" Mira whispered. As Tycho sat at her feet, watching her with his calm, steady eyes, the following day, Mira returned to the old factory. The place was as eerie as ever, cold, silent, and filled with shadows. She had no real plan other than to follow Tycho's lead. He had already been down this path before. She knew he'd guide her to whatever was still hidden. The factory was vast, the rooms that stretched far beyond what she could see. Some had been filled with junk, others with old tools and broken furniture. But there was something about the place that made her feel like it was alive, not in the usual sense, but like it was waiting for something. Tycho led her into a small, dark room near the back of the factory. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of mildew and old dust. Tycho's body stiffened again, and his nose went straight to the floor, moving in quick, sharp circles. He stopped in front of a stack of old crates, his paws scraping at the ground. "What is it, boy?" Mira asked, crouching down beside him. She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but she wasn't ready for what came next. Tycho growled low, his teeth showing. Mira felt her heart race. This wasn't just a simple search anymore. There was something deeper, something dangerous here. With a deep breath, she began moving the crates. They were heavy, but she pushed them aside one by one. After a few moments, the light from her flashlight caught something buried beneath the rubble. It was a piece of fabric, torn and frayed. She pulled it out carefully. It was part of a shirt. The fabric felt familiar. Her heart sank. It looked like one of Delaney's favorite shirts. The colors, the style. She had seen her wearing it before. This was no accident. Whoever had hidden Delaney's body had known her. They had taken something personal. Myra stood up quickly, the fabric clenched in her hand. "This is it," she whispered. "This is part of the clue we needed." Tycho moved ahead and Mira followed, moving toward another part of the factory. There was an old maintenance room she hadn't checked before, one near the back wall. The door was old, and the handle was rusted, but it wasn't locked. As she pushed it open, the stale air inside hit her like a wave. The room was empty, except for a few tools scattered across the floor. But something caught her eye. In the corner of the room, half hidden beneath a pile of old magazines, was a small, cracked cell phone. It was just like the one Delaney had. Used. Mira's pulse quickened as she reached down to pick it up. The screen was smashed and the battery was dead, but it was unmistakably hers. "You found it, didn't you, Tycho?" Mira murmured as she examined the phone. "You're telling me the truth." With the phone in hand, she took a deep breath. This was more than just a missing person case. It was a tragedy that had been covered up, hidden away in the corners of the factory. And now, with the shirt and the phone, she had the evidence that could lead her to the person responsible. Back at the precinct, Mira handed the phone over to forensics, but her gut told her there was more. The phone didn't hold much right now, but it was a clue. The text messages, the call history, all of it could tell them something. And the shirt, that was personal. As the hours passed, Mira thought about Corbin Dale, Delaney's ex-boyfriend. The rumors about him had been circulating ever since Delaney's disappearance. People said he had a temper, that he had always been jealous and controlling. Mira had spoken to him before, but now with these new pieces of evidence, she couldn't ignore the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. Tycho had never been wrong before. Mira glanced at the dog, who was lying quietly at her feet, eyes half closed but always aware. "We're not done, are we?" she asked. Tycho didn't answer, but his tail gave a soft thump against the floor. "We'll find out what happened to her," Mira promised. The next day she went to speak with Corbin again. This time, the questions were sharper, more focused. The things she had found, the shirt, the phone, they all pointed toward him. But Mira had to be careful. She couldn't accuse him without the evidence to back it up. As she drove to his house, Mira could feel the weight of the case pressing down on her. Winsong had always been a quiet town, but now nothing felt simple anymore. Taisha sat in the back seat, his eyes watching the road ahead, his body still. The clues were all around her now, and she wasn't going to let them stay buried any longer. Winsong felt different now. The quiet hum of daily life had been replaced by a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional crunch of boots in the snow. The investigation into Delaney Quinn's disappearance had become the town's focus, and even the simplest routines seemed clouded with uncertainty. Officer Myra Thorne couldn't shake the feeling that there were still pieces of the puzzle missing, and every time she thought she was close, another clue seemed to slip away. Tycho, her canine partner, had been restless. After the discoveries at the factory, the torn shirt, the cell phone, the dark corners of the old building that still held secrets, he had been unsettled. His usual calm demeanor replaced by anxious pacing and low growls. Mira trusted him, trusted his instincts. Ad knew that they were on the verge of uncovering something big. It was late afternoon, and Mira decided to head back to the old factory. The cold air bit at her face as she stepped out of her car, and the wind whispered through the trees. The factory looked even more desolate in the fading light, its shadow stretching long across the snow-covered ground. But Mira wasn't afraid anymore, not of the building, and certainly not of what she was about to uncover. Something had changed in her, something that felt like justice was finally within reach. Tycho was already alert, his ears pricked as he stood by her side. He led the way into the factory, his nose to the ground. Mira followed, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through the darkened interior of the building. The air smelled damp and cold, and the silence felt like it was pressing in on her. This time, it wasn't the silence that frightened her, it was the feeling that they were being watched. As they moved deeper into the factory, Tycho suddenly stopped. His body went rigid. Mira paused, watching him carefully. His gaze was fixed on a spot in the far corner of the room, where an old tarp lay haphazardly tossed aside. Mira walked closer, feeling the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Was hidden there? She crouched down and tugged at the tarp. Underneath a small pile of dirt and debris was scattered, but something glinted in the flashlight beam. Myra's heart raced as she reached down, pulling out a small weathered duffel bag. It was worn, frayed at the edges, and covered in dirt. She unzipped it cautiously, her mind racing with the possibilities. Inside, she found a few items. A pair of boots caked in mud, a cracked cell phone, and something wrapped in cloth. Mira held her breath as she carefully unraveled the cloth. What she found sent a chill through her body. It was a necklace, a silver crane charm attached to a delicate chain. The same necklace she had seen in the photo of Delaney. The same necklace she had remembered from when Delaney used to wear it at the diner. It was unmistakable. Mira stood up slowly, the weight of the discovery sinking in. This was it, the final piece. Delaney hadn't just disappeared, she had been silenced. And now with this necklace? She had the evidence that could tie everything together. As Mira turned to leave the factory, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her eyes scanning the message from forensics. Mira, we've analyzed. The phone you found, there's a video file on it. We've extracted the data. We need you to come in and see this. Mira's pulse quickened. The video, this could be what they needed. She didn't hesitate. She headed straight to the station, her mind racing with questions. Who had filmed the video? What had Delaney seen? Most importantly, what did it mean for the case? When Mira arrived at the station, she was met by the forensic tech, Julia Tran. Julia led her into the back room, where the video was ready to be played. You're not going to like what you see, Julia said quietly, her voice full of sympathy. Mira nodded, bracing herself for whatever was coming. As the video began, Delaney's face filled the screen. Her eyes were tired, her hair messy, and there was a sadness in her expression. She was sitting in her small apartment wearing a worn hoodie and holding the phone up to her face. If anyone's watching this, Delaney's voice was shaky. I need you to know it wasn't my choice. I'm not running away. I'm scared. ... I don't feel safe. Corbin's been following me. He won't leave me alone. Shows up at my work. He calls me all the time. I'm scared he's going to hurt me. Please, if something happens to me, it's him. I just want out. I need help. Myra's heart ached as she watched the desperation in Delaney's eyes. It was a cry for help, one that had gone unheard by everyone except the woman who had filmed it. And now, in this cold, dark room, it felt like Delaney was speaking directly. To her, the video ended abruptly, the phone's battery dying mid-sentence. Myra sat in silence for a moment, trying to process the weight of what she had just seen. Delaney had known, had tried to escape, but no one had listened. No one had believed her. And now she was gone. Mira's hands were trembling as she turned to Julia. This changes everything. We have to act on this now. We will, Julia replied. We're already working on it. We'll make sure this video gets out. We'll find him, Mira. Mira nodded, but there was a heaviness in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were close to the truth. But there was still one more thing they needed to do. As she left the station, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in a blanket of white. It was beautiful, serene, but it also felt like the world was holding its breath. Mira knew this was the turning point in the case. They had the evidence, they had the video, and now they just had to make sure the truth came to light. And as Tycho walked beside her head, held high, she knew they were getting closer to the end of this dark journey. They wouldn't stop until justice was served. Windsong was covered in a blanket of snow, its quiet streets seeming even quieter now. The case of Delaney Quinn's disappearance had become the town's nightmare, and Myra Thorne felt the weight of it with every step she took. They were so close now, so close to finding the truth. But with each new discovery, the pain of knowing how little had been done to help Delaney before, when she was alive, became harder to bear. Myra had spent the past few days pulling everything together: the video from Delaney's phone, the necklace, the torn shirt, and all the other pieces of evidence that painted a picture of fear, desperation, and silence. But still, there was one person who stood in the way of justice: Corbin Dale, Delaney's ex-boyfriend. The video had been the turning point. Delaney's final message had given them the proof they needed to bring him in. She had known the danger. She was in. She had seen the signs. And now, Mira knew it was time to make Corbin face the truth. The town was in shock after the video surfaced. People whispered in the streets, in coffee shops, and in the diner where Delaney had worked. Corbin's name was on everyone's lips. Some still couldn't believe he was capable of such cruelty, but others knew better. He had always been controlling. Delaney had been trying to escape for so long. Mira pulled into the driveway of Corbin's house. The house sat at the edge of Windsong, far enough out that it felt isolated. The windows were dark, and the yard was messy, a reflection of the man who lived there. Myra didn't waste time thinking about what he might say, or how he might try to deny it. She already knew the truth. Now, they just needed to make sure he couldn't hide from it any longer. Tycho. Her loyal canine partner sat up in the back seat as she got out of the car. The dog's eyes were focused, his body tense. He had been with her through every step of this investigation, and he knew as well as she did that the time had come. This was the moment they had been working toward. Myra knocked on the door of Corbin's house, but there was no answer. She knocked again, harder this time. After a moment, she heard movement inside. The door creaked open, revealing Corbin's face. His eyes were tired, and there was a nervousness about him that hadn't been there before. "Officer Thorne," Corbin said, his voice steady, but not quite convincing. "What can I do for you?" "We need to talk, Corbin," Myra said. Tone firm but calm. "It's about Delaney." His expression faltered for a moment before he quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Delaney? I already told you everything I know. I haven't seen her in weeks. I don't know where she went." "You're lying," Mira said simply. "We found her. We found parts of her. Found your prints on the freezer. And we found this." She pulled out the small silver crane necklace from her pocket, holding it up for him to see. His face went pale. Mira saw the panic in his eyes before he could hide it. "That's not mine," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know where you got that, but I swear I didn't do anything to her." Tycho let out a low growl from behind her, sensing Corbin's anxiety. Mira didn't flinch. She had heard enough lies already. "We know about the video, Corbin," she said, her voice steady. "Delaney recorded a message before she disappeared. She told us everything, how you wouldn't let her go, how you controlled her, and how you made her feel like there was no way out. It's all on the record now. You're not getting away with this." The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy, before Corbin's eyes finally dropped to the ground. He stepped back, away from the door, and ran a hand through his messy hair. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he muttered. "She was going to leave me. She wouldn't listen. I just wanted her to stay. I never meant to hurt her." Mira's heart tightened, but she didn't let it show. "What happened, Corbin? Tell me the truth." He looked up at her then, his eyes wild with fear. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to, I just... She kept fighting me, and then she wouldn't stop screaming. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I hit her, I thought, Maybe if I could just make it go away, no one would ever." No, his confession hung in the air like a storm about to break. Mira didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Everything they needed was in his words now. The confession, the evidence, the proof that he had been hiding the truth all along. Tycho barked once, his tail stiff, and Myra knew it was time to end this. "Corbindale," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "You're under arrest for the murder of Delaney Quinn. You have the right to remain silent." As she handcuffed him and led him to the patrol car, Myra couldn't help but think of how much could have been different if someone had listened to Delaney sooner. How much pain and fear she could have avoided if she had been believed. But at least now, with Corbin in custody, Delaney's voice was no longer silenced. The snow continued to fall as Mira drove back to the station. She glanced at Tycho, who was sitting quietly in the back seat, watching the world outside. He had been the one to find the truth. He had been the one who refused to let the story fade into silence. Mira smiled softly, reaching back to give him a pat on the head. "Good job, boy," she whispered. "You didn't let her down." As they pulled into the station, the weight of the case seemed to lift just a little. Windsong would never be the same, but at least now the truth was out. And sometimes that was all that mattered.